from Wyoming. Sorry it's been so long since the last video. Life has happened. Today we're going to talk about planning and designing your timber frame. First thing you have to do is figure out what you're building the timber frame for. In my case, I am building a timber frame for a shed to keep the wind off of me while I'm using my sawmill. So it doesn't have to be really big and fancy, but it helps me to figure out how to do the timber framing. Next thing I had to do was figure out how long it had to be, how wide it had to be, how high it had to be. Height was important so that I could get the logs onto and the wood off of the sawmill. Now, the thing that you need to be aware of, when you design something, you have to feel comfortable about it. If you can't feel comfortable about you designing it, then you probably need to have a professional design it. There's nothing wrong with that. I just happen to feel comfortable. When you're designing, you have to take into account all of the loads that will be on the structure. You have to start at the top of the structure. What's the snow load going to be, if you have a snow load? What are the wind loads going to be? How strong are the strongest winds that you typically have? Now, I'm not talking necessarily about storm, tornadoes, or hurricanes. Those are exceptional storms. My case here in Wyoming, it's not uncommon to have 50 and 60 mile an hour winds. Occasionally, they'll get up to 80 or almost 90 miles an hour. So I have to take that into account in designing my timber frame. I also take into account what direction I want to put my structure so that it does provide me wind protection. The short end of my shed actually faces right into the dominant direction of the wind, which happens to be the south-southwest. The long side doesn't get it. The only problem with that is when we get snow here, it comes out of the north or the northeast. So I have to also take that into account. So in designing my structure, and I feel confident in the designs that I've made, I'm using 6-inch beams, 6-inch tie beams, and 6-inch top plates. My braces are 4x4. My ribbing on top will be 3x3. Now I'm going to show you some of the drawings that I have made in making my timber frame. First thing, I've done an overall drawing of what it potentially will look like. I'm going to show you that now. The view on the top is what it looks like looking down on top of it. Other than the rafter boards, I have not included those. They would just clutter up the drawing. This is basically the tie beams, the top plates, and the posts. Bottom view, That's what it looks like from the northwest, the direction that I would be loading the logs onto the sawmill. I have not included the appearance of the sawmill. Dimensioning on top gives me an idea of what it needed to be. The rest of the drawings are what each individual member or piece will look like. You'll notice that I put north, east, south, and west. That is the direction that faces when it's put into place. I have shown all of the notches, the mortises, and tenons for each member. I also include a lot of the dimensioning so that when I go to lay out this particular member, I don't have to do anything but read the drawing. In some cases, they are typical. They're the same for every drawing. In some cases, they are unique to that particular member. This happens to be post number 2. This happens to be post number 1. Again, south, east, north, and west with dimensioning. To make it easier when I go to lay this out and actually make the cuts. You'll also notice that I show in somewhat which direction the braces are going so that I have a visual representation to make it clearer in my own mind. I am a very visual learning person. This happens to be post number 4 and post number 7. They happen to be identical. Again, you can see the dimensioning and the orientation. This is post number 3 and number 6. Again, they are identical. Save a little bit on the drawing time. I drew these by hand. That way I could think through each step. They could be done digitally. I just happen to prefer to draw them on paper. This is post number 5. It's a unique post. There is no matching post to it. Again, a little less dimensioning. This is post number 9. I have a total of 9 posts. Post number 8. Again, a lot of the dimensions are typical for all of the posts, but some of the features are unique to that post. That's why I had to make a separate drawing for each group of posts. These are the top plates. The 2 top plates that go on the south side will have a mortise cut in them in the middle of the splice joint to go on to post number 5. The 2 top plates on the north side will not have this mortise because there's no post in the middle, so that I have a 16-foot wide area to load the logs onto the sawmill. These happen to be the drawings for the tie beam. I did not show the whole length because most of it in the middle has no features. But it shows where the mortises are, the tenons, in designing my sawmill shed, I just did the drawings on my own without looking at any books at that point other than the design of the joints themselves. Subsequently, my wife, who happens to be a librarian, found some books at our county library, and one of them happens to show several building designs, and without knowing it, I copied, or without intention, their process. They would show overall view of the building, and then they would show individual pieces that would go into the building. And this book is a rather old copyright. I'm not sure how old, but I know it's not very new. So without intention, I did the same thing that this guy who wrote this book happened to do. I'm going to show you a picture of that here in just a second. This just happens to be the back cover of the book. You can see there's an overall sketch of what the building would look like. There is an end view that shows all of the location of the pieces. And then in the top, a typical showing some of the pieces, the lengths, the names of them, and where the features are cut into each one of those. I know a lot of you are not getting onto this website to hear me talk. You want to see how joints are made, how timber frames are cut, and eventually how they're put together. So future videos at this point are planned to have nothing but me demonstrating, showing you how one way is to cut the various features, the tenons, the mortises, the slots, into each member of the timber frame. Some of you are also interested in figuring out what the S and S times 2 actually means. Well, today I'm going to give you half of the answer. One of the S and S stands for splinters and sawdust. That's my half of the S and S times 2. The other half happens to be for my wife. And when she gets to retire in 2 more years, she will become part of the S and S. And later on, I may be able to tell you what her half of the S and S stands for. But for now, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy my channel. You know what you need to do if you enjoy the channel. I'm doing this more just as a sharing, a teaching, because I had taught for so many years, it's ingrained. Thank you for watching. See you on the next one.